have a lot of Rottenborn because I was going to cut together a video for the closing arguments, but the closing arguments are done. We don't need to do closing arguments that much anymore, Walter. I got more about the Elaine Bredehoft situation. Oh my God, Elaine, I can't believe it. Like, I think she's like doing stuff to try to cover for her malpractice. That's all I can think of with Elaine. You know, if you saw the picture, I clearly am not an overly big fan of Elaine. Because I gave her the red eyes of crazy twice. Let's see if I could pull up on the screen and blobber a little bit about the, I'm going to get rid of that because I don't need that on there anymore. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull up for everybody a little bit about this Elaine Bredehoft situation. She went on ABC and CBS, went around chatting her booty off, being like, being all weird and stuff. And then she also was supposed to be on Court TV today. And guess what? Court TV, she canceled on you. It kind of made sense to me that she canceled. Because I honestly think
and we are joined now by a lot of it was
that
suppressed in this case as opposed
because you kind of were putting your own client in a little bit of jeopardy. Why were you doing that? You're literally doing what Adam Waldman did years ago, but maybe to a worse degree, because now your client is like, you're no longer your client's agent on this? What's going on? Well, you just argued that last week. So I just, oh my God, I can't believe she did that. The mountains of evidence thing. Let's talk about Elaine Bredehoft for a minute. Let's see if I can pull up Elaine Bredehoft. This is me and Elaine. Hi, Elaine. She's on, is this the one where she's on Good Morning America? She's on CBS Mornings. So this was a, let's see who's on this. Was this Nate Burleson who's on there? But Nate Burleson had, yes, Nate Burleson, man. Nate Burleson. Cleveland Brown, former Cleveland Brown player, Nate Burleson. Nickelodeon announcer for the playoff game that they hosted. Yes, Nate Burleson brought up some pretty interesting stuff with that. He kind of questioned her on, like, okay, like, you're complaining about what the other side did. What did you do, Miss Elaine? What did you do wrong, Elaine? You know, what could your side have done better, Elaine? And she just kind of sidestepped every question. She kind of came off very Donald Trumpy. She was very like, listen, we had evidence. We had mountains of evidence. We had more evidence. This is the worst Donald Trump impression in the history of ever. But I'm saying, like, I'm not even saying that, like, the Donald Trumpiness of it was weird. I'm saying that, like, we have mountains of evidence. Evidence of it is weird. Because I didn't see the mountains. I saw planes. I saw planes of evidence. I didn't even see planes of evidence. I feel like if it was planes of evidence, they would have ruled in your favor. It was more like boxcars of evidence. And not even boxcars would have been more helpful. It was a little electric, like, it was a teacup of evidence. There we go. It was a teacup of evidence. And Johnny Depp poured a teapot on top of it. Like, he had just way more evidence helping him out. You know what really hurt Amber Heard? Amber Heard. Amber Heard's two worst enemies were her own voice on recording and her own dang testimony. She came off so false. Super fake. I just didn't quite get it. It was very weird. Now, I don't know why you're going around now that your client lost, Elaine. I don't know why you're running around on here going on CBS Morning. Like, I don't get this. Her PR strategy is, I'm going to go on morning shows and tell everybody we lost because the other side cheated. Meanwhile, you're the one who kind of cheated a little bit more than anybody else, Elaine. Not knowing how to ask a non-leading question on direct ever. How about on redirect where you literally gave up? I just, like... I think a lot of lawyers gave Elaine a lot of credit and kind of was like, okay, like, you know, she handled a lot of the second half of that case. You know, clearly Amber Heard was probably a difficult client. This has nothing to do with having a difficult client. This is, I'm trying to make it up to my client who clearly is not happy with me. And I'm going on morning shows and talking on her behalf to try, I don't know, because my client lost. And I cost my client $8 million. Because again, like, her closing argument, I forgot, like, everybody forgets she had a closing argument, mainly because her closing argument was word salad on cocaine. Like, I was like, what the hell? Did you get into Johnny Depp's jar of cocaine? She just went on this weird riff tangent. It was supposed to be she was doing the closing argument, but only for the counterclaim. And she just literally did a riff track of, like, basically everything, rehashed half of Rottenborn's thing without the law. In fact, misstating the law on malice. Just, I couldn't believe, I couldn't believe her. And it was kind of sad because, it's sad because you're an attorney. And as an attorney, you have certain, like, duties and obligations to act accordingly, right? You're not seeing Rottenborn going on TV shows, mainly because Rottenborn probably felt like he did the best he could with what he had. You never had a moment where, like, Rottenborn did do weird things. Like, don't get me wrong, Rottenborn's cross of Johnny Depp the first time, and I think, I don't know if I actually said this anywhere, but Rottenborn's first cross, I think what happened was he spent too much time with Johnny Depp, and he got in the weeds. And Johnny Depp's like an endurance fighter. And Rottenborn's like a quick rabbit puncher, where if he can get you in the beginning, he's doing well. He's like Conor McGregor. He'll gas out by like round 2. Whereas Johnny Depp is like Nate Diaz. He's just gonna, like, he's gonna slog you down. You're not gonna be able to, he's gonna, you think you're gonna throw me some text messages, man? Text message me, huh? You think those text messages gonna get me, man? And again, I talked a little bit about the whole, that Johnny Depp's second time going up against him on cross, because I think Rottenborn's second cross at Johnny Depp, again, was, I don't know if Depp's team had to put Johnny Depp up on, the second time around, but I don't know if it was the worst thing in the world, because I think it put in the jury's heads a lot. Like, I think the direct testimony from Johnny Depp did help. I think the cross didn't, and I don't think the redirect helped. And so we got kind of left with a weird sick, I'm sure a lot of people who were pro-Depp had a weird sick feeling in their stomach, right? Kind of a lingering, like, oh no, Depp might lose this thing, and it might be because of this cross-examination. And then Amber Heard's team said, well, it didn't work for Johnny, let's try it ourselves, because Amber Heard was so good the first time around. And we saw Amber Heard make a statement afterwards, and we saw Johnny Depp's people release a statement. And listen, I look at this at the end of the day, and listen, we'll talk about Amber Heard's side of the verdict. I didn't think it was that ridiculous that she won on that, because it felt like the jury was kind of saying, like, listen, we gave her this count about the police being called back up and them roughing up the place because, like, there's no evidence to this in the record. And so they gave that to Amber Heard. I don't know if the malice portion was proved on that, because, like we understand, Adam Waldman made that decision based off of available evidence. I think I think they forgot to apply the malice standard there. And that's maybe the mistake on that. I don't know, because it clearly didn't seem like he knowingly or with any kind of reckless disregard for the truth made those statements. It was, he did research, he interviewed people, but again, like, there's no evidence in the record that the police were called a second time, and I think that's what maybe... And again, I think they looked at it as, okay, we're going to give her $2 million back, and, we're going to give Johnny Depp $13 million. I don't think they realized that it wasn't going to truly offset, and that the punitive damages were capped, because it's not in the jury instructions that punitive damages are capped, and thus they didn't know that it was going to be capped at $350,000. And the only person who mentioned it in closing arguments was Elaine Bredehoft, this person right here. Oh my God, Elaine, you're a lawyer. Be lawyerly. Like, it's weird when I have to admonish you. When the man who wears denim jackets everywhere when he's not in court is admonishing attorneys on the YouTuber. I just don't know what that says about you. So yeah, let's play.
Attorney for Amber Heard is with us now, and we should mention we did also reach out to Johnny Depp's team, but they declined to be interviewed this morning. Elaine, thank you.
Yeah, because they know how to be the bigger man.
We're so very glad you're here.
Thank you.
We heard Amber's reaction to the verdict yesterday. This seems to be a huge victory for Johnny Depp this morning.
Yeah, a major setback for women, for women inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom.
Because?
Because basically what this said, you know, Amber had an enormous...
Because I said so, lady. That's all it is. I don't get that. I don't know if watching this is good because it might just make my heart rate go up. I liked this one a little bit better just because it was
enormous amount of evidence, although a lot of it was suppressed in this case as opposed to the UK. But look at all the women who have no evidence.
I want a good reminder because I have my notes in front of me. Thank you, Elaine, for reminding me. She brings up the UK case. And that's a weird thing because she brings up the UK. They didn't have... First off, I hate to break it to you, Elaine. Amber Heard wasn't a party to the UK case. She was a witness, right? And there was different evidence in the UK case. And in fact, there was different evidence in this case that probably would have switched it to... Maybe the judge would have decided differently, Elaine. Did you think of that, Elaine? Did you think of that? I don't think you did, Elaine. I'm just saying. Elaine don't know jack about what the judge may or may not have done had the judge known. And by the way, that judge had some bad biases. I think he was you can make some arguments about maybe some bias against drugs, sex. Put a lot of he even made a mention, and maybe like a little bit. I don't know. Her being called a gold digger was a big problem. And listen, I get it. Like gold digger's not a great thing to be called, but a big thing of what he was talking about was the donations thing. This is why the donations thing was so big in the Johnny Depp trial. Because they knew she said under oath she had donated all $7 million of the money. And now they got to impeach her on it. Because through their discovery in subpoenaing the ACLU, they were able to discover, hey, wait a second, you didn't donate all that money. They were able to go to the Children's Hospital of LA and get a deposition, and they did a video deposition, and they're like, nope, not even close. Got a little bit of money from Elon, but none of the not much of that settlement money you guys are all talking about. So, yeah, thank you, Elaine. I'm going to pull up my notes on here somewhere. It's here. Oh, here we are. Here we go. No, not monkeypox. Where is it? Oh, my God. Oh, here we go. Good. I appreciate anybody. Here we go. So, I wanted to talk about the UK trial a little bit. I'll pull back up Elaine just so we have somebody who looks worse than me as a lawyer. Thank you, Elaine, for making me look good. If you wanted a little bit of hints about the UK trial was actually... So, Johnny Depp was suing the Sun. We kind of all know that, right? I think a lot of people don't know what the legal standards were in the UK trial. They had to do it by a balancing of the probabilities that the article was substantially true in the meaning that it bore. All this meant was, it's literally actually a similar standard to preponderance of the evidence, which is the same standard Johnny Depp had to meet in this trial. It's just the burden of proof was on him in America, whereas the burden of proof was on the Sun in the UK. Like I said, different... It was different burdens of proof, and weirdly enough, the side that had the higher burden won in each case. But the balancing of the probabilities, it's, does the evidence you would find more persuasive against all the evidence that has been omitted in the case? It's not a substantially high evidentiary bar. It's like if you said 50%, 51%, right? Like, it's like 50% plus 1, or, like, I know some people will say it's 51%. It's really 50% plus 1. Whatever that 1 is. You want to say 1% plus 1 point in your points column. But basically, it's just, okay, you're a little bit more than half. That's all you needed. that's what a preponderance of the evidence standard is. That's what a balancing of the probability is. Sounds familiar. Greater weight of the evidence, preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not is essentially it. And but imagine if you were so narrow. You were 51% for Johnny Depp. You were, maybe in the UK, you heard all that testimony. You heard some of the stuff that came in. You didn't get to hear some of the exculpatory stuff that came in this trial. Maybe you were under the impression that she did donate the money. Maybe the TMZ thing was affecting a little bit of it. Because remember, I think a big part of this trial in the Johnny Depp case was proving that Amber Heard had a reason to go ahead and do all this. And, they're saying, oh, well, she donated the money. Why did she go ahead and get the TRO 6 days later? Well, she wasn't comfortable to come out. Well, she was so comfortable to come out that she told TMZ that she had a bruise on her cheek. Might be a little bit different, right? The deposition from 6 years ago didn't come in the UK trial. There's a lot of evidence that didn't come into the UK trial. There was a lot of sworn affidavits and not cross-examining of witnesses in the UK trial. It was very different. And how he weighed certain testimony was different. How he weighed, the information provided by the parties was different. So, for instance, how he, they went incident by incident, but like, for instance, the first incident, the tattoo incident, according to Miss Heard, he later blamed his behavior on the monster, i.e. his alter ego. His ruling was, seen in isolation, the evidence that Mr. Depp assaulted Miss Heard on this occasion might not be sufficient. So he's saying this one incident was not proven, but taking all the evidence as a whole, I find that it did occur, which is strange. The first occurrences you're saying, this first occurrence, the alleged first occurrence, the tattoo incident, the Winona Ryder incident, you're saying it did occur, but it's not because of any of the evidence that you've heard about that individual incident. It's literally just because you think he's a he's a drug addict who blacks out all the time and clearly didn't remember this incident, and then you heard Amber Heard talk about it. And literally Johnny Depp was like, I don't remember anything of this scenario. That's kind of weird. That's why it didn't come out the same way in this trial, because you had context, you had witnesses, you had people, you got both of them under oath, you had them, now not that they didn't both speak under oath in that trial, but you had different context to everything, and like I said, the way he weighed this one incident was, if it wasn't for the other 13 incidences that he was also going through, he wouldn't have, if this was just to make sure that this one incident did or didn't happen, he probably would have said no. But because he was weighing evidence in other incidences, he decided that this incident definitely happened. Not definitely happened, but there was more than likely some probability that this happened. I think that's a very weak argument. There was some text messages that did come in on this trial, but that did not come in the U.S. trial, but that's because they were hearsay. And not only that, some of them were triple hearsay. It's from, for instance, text messages that were from her to her mother that didn't come in. But also, those text messages are her literally saying he didn't hit her. So it becomes a weird situation. I get why they didn't buy any of this. I get why when it came here, it wasn't allowed in, because again, your own statement, these text messages, just because you said it before doesn't make it true. It goes back to, this is the performance of a lifetime. That's Johnny Depp's side's argument, is that this was all a setup. And that was Johnny Depp's side's argument, and that's kind of what we came down to here. The Hicksville incident, the way he weighed that. Depp had been angry with the attention. Oh, this was interesting, was the trailer incident with the Hicksville thing. So this is, remember, in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, we heard from the actual owner of the Hicksville trailer park, Morgan Knight. And, there's this big argument, and Depp caused significant damage to the trailer. Miss Sexton could see that the damage was more than a broken light fixture, which Mr. Depp admitted damaging. So that was literally Johnny Depp's testimony, was that it was a light fixture that was broken. He accepted the argument and that the damage to the property are symptomatic of Mr. Depp's manner when the monster side of his personality was dominant. Accepted the evidence. Another aspect of the monster is that Depp physically assaulted her as she described. This is a weird thing because he broke a like sconce. Like it was, but he weighed this differently because, again, there was new evidence in this trial. There was the Morgan Knight testimony. And that was the guy who owned the trailer park, who testified as to the damages. That was somebody who came in as a rebuttal witness on this trial, who came in really late in May. There was quite a few people who kind of perked up, who I was almost shocked they didn't have this information. Like, there's almost, like, for how well Johnny Depp's team was hitting at bat, it's weird they never got information as to who Morgan Knight was. Morgan Tremaine, I understood. You know, Spicy Draco. That guy kind of came out of the woodwork from TMZ. You might not have been able to, you might not have known that that was the guy you had to talk to at TMZ. But the woman who arrested Amber Heard up in Seattle, who she didn't testify to her arresting Amber Heard, but she was one of the arresting officers. I think they weren't allowed to mention that as part of her testimony. When they brought up, that was somebody who was not part of this trial, although to be fair, the judge in the UK trial did say any of their past violent behavior really wasn't weighing, because it's been a long time since any of that stuff had happened anyway. It kind of made sense. I'm not saying it was the wrong decision on that. Again, a lot of it's hearsay evidence that they allowed in the UK trial, which, Elaine, you're an American attorney. If you want more hearsay in your justice system, don't be an American attorney. Elaine Bredehoft. So yeah, in the UK trial, there was a lot more hearsay testimony. The donations issue was different. There were at least two witnesses that came. There were more than two witnesses that came in on this trial that weren't on that trial. But you also had in-person or deposition testimony. It was not this, oh, I'm just going to submit a written statement thing. So, as I say, like, it's so convoluted. You keep on leaning on that, though, Elaine. I'm just saying. Oh, no, that's not what I want. I wanted to play this.
Evidence. All these women who suffer from domestic violence, domestic abuse, they don't have evidence. And basically what this jury said is unless you pull out your cell phone and you tape record your spouse beating you, you're out of luck.
But Elaine, I think it was bigger than that, because you have the evidence, as you say, but they did not believe her. Why do you think they did not believe her?
I think that a lot of that was that it was Johnny Depp. I think the celebrity status,
but she's a celebrity too. But she's a celebrity too.
Right.
But you have to remember, it's a tale of two trials. All the evidence came in the UK.
No,
Mr. Depp brought that one. The burden of proof was on the son in the UK because they had called him a wife beater and talked about the domestic violence. He had his opportunity to tell the truth then. And a 3-week trial, he lost. The judge found 12 acts of domestic violence, including sexual violence. And that came out November 2, 2020. We weren't allowed to tell the jury that.
Well, it's a different system, and the judge, it wasn't a jury, it was a judge. The judge said it was substantially true, and that is significant, and I think surprised a lot of legal analysts. But, you know, in this case, the jury not only didn't believe Amber Heard, but in ruling that she acted with actual malice, that means she had the intent to cause harm, right? That's a pretty high standard to approve.
And it's pretty amazing, since the op-ed never even mentioned Mr. Depp. You have to remember that. What they learned from the UK case is to demonize Amber, which is what they did, and to to try to suppress as much of the evidence that came in the UK and did not come in the United States. But the other problem is we had cameras in the courtroom. So here we had, not only did we have a group of Depp fans that were there every day, 100 were allowed in. They lined up at 1 o'clock in the morning for their wristbands to be in that courtroom. But we had everything on camera, and we had tremendous social media that was very, very, very much against Amber.
It was pointed out that that was the first time that a victim of sexual abuse had to testify on live television.
And I fought hard and lost that battle. So, it should not have happened.
So I am a former NFL player, and after a hard loss, it's easy to wake up and point to the other side. Oftentimes, I realized the better thing to do was to look in the mirror. What mistakes did I make as a player? What mistakes did our coaching staff make? And then how can we improve from there? Do you feel like you guys made any mistakes along the way? Do you feel like Amber made a mistake while she was on the stand? Because you're saying it's
there's no attorney who would ever answer that question. It's not a bullshit question. It's a very proper question. What did you do wrong is the exact right question, Mr. Burleson. The only thing is, no attorney is going to answer that correctly, or, well, they're not going to answer it truthfully, because the correct answer is don't answer. And which is what Elaine does. And the reason why Elaine does that is because she's an attorney, and she understands that if she admits that she did something wrong, and Amber Heard, who's probably a very litigious client, might sue her to help reimburse a little bit of the Johnny Depp claim, then Elaine Bredehoft might have to go ahead and put a claim in on her malpractice insurance. And I'm pretty sure half the reason why she's here right now is because she's trying to make sure she doesn't have to file a claim on her malpractice insurance. Go ahead, Mr. Nate Burleson.
It's Johnny, it's the people who support him. But what about you and your team?
Well, and that's an excellent question. And to say, and you know, Amber even said on the stand, I am not perfect. I am a human being. These people were giving her death threats. They threatened to microwave her baby. This is the kind of social media she was getting. So are any of us perfect? No. Is there something else we feel we should have done? Yes, absolutely. I redo my closings 100 times afterwards, whether I win or lose. That's part of being a good lawyer, a good trial lawyer, is there's always something. But I think that there were a lot of influences here that were beyond our control. And I think the social media, it was like a Roman Colosseum. Is the best way to describe the atmosphere here. And I have to believe that the jury, even though they're told not to go and look at anything, they have weekends, they have families, they have social media.
They were not sequestered. They were not sequestered.
And the 10-day period we had, how could they not have been influenced?
But Elaine, for most people watching this trial, and a lot of people, as you know, it got huge views. It just seemed to be so messy and salacious and so tawdry on both sides. On both sides. And I think for a lot of people from the outside looking in thought both of them were not telling the truth, and that they had they mutually abused each other. Do you not believe that that was the case?
No, and that's one of the many misnomers. The way that Depp's team approached this was based on ignorance of domestic violence. It completely ignored the cycle of violence and just said, oh, she wouldn't have done this if he had been hitting her. That was their approach.
So you thought that they weren't fighting fair?
Correct. I don't think they were fighting fair.
And you think Amber Heard is, in fact, a survivor of domestic violence?
Yes, I absolutely believe that. And there's a tremendous amount of evidence, much of which did not come into this trial, did come into the UK trial. We even had more evidence. We had medical records. We had mental health records that went back to 2012 that were contemporaneous. We had text messages from Mr. Depp's assistant saying, when I told him that he had kicked you, he cried.
So how is she today, Elaine? How is she today? What is her next move?
She's well. Her next move is appeal. There were a number.
Heartbroken.
She is heartbroken. And one of the first things that she said when she came back from the verdict, when we went into the conference room, was, "I am so sorry to all these women."
She said that?
Yes. She felt like she had let down all of these women because she had more evidence than most people do, and yet they still didn't believe her.
Elaine Bredehoft, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. We'll be right back.
Well, I mean,
get exactly what you want on Wayfair.
Stuck on that.
By Amber Heard's attorney, Elaine Bredehoft. Good morning to you. It's good to see you. First question, how is Amber doing? We saw her hearing that verdict.